known me and have talked, and I was talking, I wanted to think that cater this a little bit differently. I've got a whole 45 minutes, an hour, but given kind of the size, I wanted to shift it a little bit, be a little more intentional for what you guys need. So with that, I don't want to just start talking about things that you already know. I want to kind of hear from you guys what's top of mind. So Oliver, I know what's going on within your school and what and a lot of the stuff that I normally present on, I've already covered with you. Always hearing it a second time is good. But Ray and Bob and Steve, I'm just curious, where are you at in your team's journey and what's top of mind? So like, you don't have to say your school or anything, kind of totally up to you. But I'm just, where are you at in your journey in the sense of, do you have teams enabled for your faculty and staff and also students? And what's top of mind in terms of an issue or something that you want to accomplish? Is it like, hey, how does, we want to get our students using Teams? Or, another hot topic is, hey, how do we get Google and Teams to work together? And so I can spend time talking about that. I have about 6 hours worth of content, and I've got about 55 minutes left. So that's where I'm kind of like wondering where I should focus my time. And it also might be telephony. So, hey, Ray, if you don't mind, like let's kind of really quick, top of mind, is there anything specific that you want me to touch on? And the others, if you want to use the chat, you can go ahead and do that also, or if you want to unmute your mic.
Yeah, so I think we briefly talked about it before. So where we're at, our network team is using Teams. We have sporadic use through the rest of our IT groups. We actually turned it off for our staff and students because what we found were they were creating their own teams, which was creating groups in Office 365, which was messing up our address list. So we wanted to get a handle on that before we actually rolled it out. Maybe we've talked about that in passing in like some other meeting. And I know we had some things in place as far as like who can create groups and whatnot. So I know with Skype being rolled out, we're going to have to either start using Teams or they're going to go to something else. So it's more of we're starting it, but we want to make sure it's done right before we just open it up and then have to pull back a lot of stuff.
Okay, got it. Bob was interested in IP telephony. Okay, I'll cover voice. Ray, I'll cover that in terms of yours rolling out because you can tweak that. Monitoring student use, bullying, texting, got it. Scope chat.
Not so much texting as sexting and inappropriate content and things like that.
Got it. DLP. Naughty words list. Okay.
DLP with your own very personal and private information.
Got it. Oliver, Bob, anything else kind of the top for staff and Google for students? Okay, so maybe I cover the Google side of things, Google and Teams.
Yeah, this is Steve here. The IP telephony part is definitely something of interest to me. We're a call manager shop here, and I definitely like to integrate the two. I know that there's ways to do it, so I'm curious about that voice aspect. But right now, I mean, we've been using Teams now for a little bit over a year, and it kind of it went from a gradual use to, all right, this is what we're going to live on because of COVID, and we've just been having to learn how to use it, how to make the best of it without really any formal training, any formal how-tos or policies on how we would be using Teams. And a lot of the staff has been doing what they can to best collaborate with Microsoft 365 and Teams, but I know that we're definitely not using it to the best of its ability. And when you mentioned a second ago when you opened about Google and best practices, I guess I'm definitely interested in that because in our environment we definitely want to use this really awesome business-centric tool in Microsoft 365 for the staff, but our students, especially because of just the way we're designed here we're a feeder program to the high school district, and they're going to be they have no there's no signs of them leaving Google for their students. So we got to make sure our students are as acclimated with Google as possible. So I guess, best practices on that whole tie-in, on staff and students, and maybe things that we're not thinking of.
Okay, got it. I think I got a good understanding now. You guys have all done that. Really. Okay, I think I got enough comments, kind of feedback. I first want to start with a slide that I didn't think that I was actually going to start with, but I think it's very, very relevant. So I like to spend majority of my time demoing instead of slideware. So and if I do show a slide, it's kind of be like to emphasize a point. And so I heard some stuff about Google. Google, I don't know if you guys realize, announced kind of two big things recently. They announced some changes in their licensing, and they announced some changes in their storage. And so I put this slide together. This is an Eric special slide, so I didn't get this from marketing or anything, because it usually is, I mean, I got a whole presentation on it, but I don't have the time to do that. What I'm really wanting to just draw out is Google is changing their licensing model, and they're also changing their storage model. And I want you to understand the value that Microsoft provides in a very quick snapshot. So at a free level, Google and Microsoft provide the same things. From a licensing model, Google is changing to be you pay for students and you get faculty included, where Microsoft's model is you pay for faculty and you get students included. Microsoft has the benefit on that because you're actually going to be purchasing less but getting more. Around storage, Google is going to start pooling and capping the storage at a tenant level. Microsoft has unlimited data for file storage. That's OneDrive for Business and email. School data sync we have. Google is going to charge for that. Microsoft is free. For meetings and advanced capabilities, Google is going to start charging for that, where Microsoft is free. And so this kind of quick snapshot is just an overview of kind of at a really high level about some of the changes. So I don't want to get into the details on this. I just want you to take a moment in time, understand that licensing and data changes were announced with Google, and kind of understanding the impact of that's going to have on you. So that's kind of my spiel in general with that. I think kind of the next one that I wanted to talk about was a lot of good feedback. I have this slide that I really like to talk about, and it's called my wheel. And it's, a lot of people think about Teams as just meetings and Zoom. Okay, Teams does meetings, and then Zoom, and it's Teams and Zoom, or Teams and WebEx and Google, when there's so much more that Teams provides. And I think all of you guys, because I've talked to you at some different levels, understand that. Bob had asked around, or was it Bob, your IP telephony, so calling and voice, collaboration. There was questions around that. How do we best collaborate with using Teams? Collaboration is also about data. You have unlimited storage in OneDrive for Business. So I know that's like Oliver and Stockton, they moved all their stuff up to OneDrive for Business. They're tapping into that unlimited data pools already. And then chat is a more effective way of communicating. In fact, I chat with Carlton and Glenn all the time. I rarely send emails unless it's an email forward. Chat is just a way, let me say it a different way. You can tell your teachers, hey, you can reduce your email in half and provide a better experience communicating that is more immersive, it's more collaborative, it's more effective without spam. Because anytime you do chatting in Teams, you're authenticating. So you don't need to worry about email, spammers and those particular things, because everything's going to be authenticated and you can trust who that in person is that you're chatting with. And so kind of there's a lot of aspects to Teams is kind of the key point within this slide. To kind of just root ourselves in kind of the back end understanding. And I'm kind of go fast because I think you guys understand some of this stuff, or you may have a high level of it and I'm just providing another angle on it. So feel free to, I'm looking at the chat, so post stuff in there if you guys have questions around anything. So I'll be moderating that. And Andre is on the call also, so he'll be helping out moderate it, and same with Glenn. So if this doesn't necessarily make sense, you want me to elaborate on things. So to understand Teams, I love this slide because on the right-hand side is all the dependent services, whether it's Exchange, SharePoint, or OneDrive for Business. Teams is like a front end to that. So a good example of that is anytime you're chatting, your chats are actually stored in Exchange Online. Just like your email, when you send an email, is stored in Exchange Online. Your chats are stored in Exchange Online. When you're chatting and I share a file, like Andre, I was sharing a file with him last week, it's actually going to upload and share that file with Andre and put it in my OneDrive for Business. And that's awesome because I don't have to upload and then go in and share the file with Andre. It already knows that I'm in the chat with Andre and simply will upload it and do the automatic sharing. So it makes it really, really fast in that sense. When you do a call, and you leave a voicemail, that voicemail is stored in Exchange Online. It's the data repository for it. Any calendaring, the back end of calendaring is Exchange Online. So Exchange Online does more than just email. It's a data repository for a lot of things. When you create a team, two things happen. An M365 group gets created, permissioning, and a SharePoint site gets attached to that for data storage. Now, the way I like to think about what a team is really a super distribution group. And this goes to one of the points, Ray, that you were talking about, how you had teams available for everybody. Well, the ability to create a team. So everyone has the capability by default to create a team. And so you could limit that by creating a Azure AD group and then assigning people who are allowed to do that. So you have to do that all during PowerShell. So I could post a link for that if I haven't given it to you already on that, or Andre can go and find it and post it. But you would create a security group, and then only the people that are members of it can create teams. But it comes into more of a methodology of, well, who should be, how do we create teams and how do we do that? And so that brings into School Data Sync, which is a connector that connects Azure Active Directory with your SIS. So let's say you're using Aries. Well, in your SIS, you're doing all your class rostering. And what the School Data Sync will do is actually synchronize your classes. It will create a team. So Mr. Mary fourth grade class, Mr. Mary will be the owner of that team, and all the students will be members of that team. All of that happens through this sync. You don't have to have your teachers create the teams and add all the students to it. That connector automatically does all of that. And so that School Data Sync is free. In fact, we will white glove. We have a special fast track team that will help you set that up and configure it all for you. It is truly white glove. So I can open a request, or Glenn or Andre, any of us can do that to get you started on that School Data Sync. But that is, going back, Ray, is one of the most effective ways of doing collaboration, is having School Data Sync to create those, and then your teachers can organize within that channel, just the structure of a team. And I won't, just for the sake of time, go into a lot of that of you can have up to 300 channels. I think we all know what a channel is, but you can go up to 300 channels. 30 of those can be private. And you could create a channel for social studies and fun and science and general and all of that, and how they kind of organize their classroom in that particular thing. So if you haven't looked at School Data Sync, I would add that to your list. I could talk more about it, but really kind of the next step is, if you're interested in that, let's open a fast track request and get that engagement going. And again, that's all free, and I can open that up. Just shoot me an email or just post it in the chat or however. All of you should pretty much have my email, and if you don't, you have Glenn's, but for the sake of just making sure that everyone has it, I just posted it in the chat, so you can email me or Glenn on those particular things or as follow-up questions. So teams. So that's an easiest way to get those teams created. Of course, you could do it the ad hoc way also, but
really it comes down to the easiest way to understand who can create a team and not. So if you need, Ray, kind of that litmus test, I guess you could call it, is do you allow your faculty and staff to create distribution groups? And if the answer to that question is yes, then I would say extend that same capability to allow them to create a team. And that should provide a good understanding of what kind of a team is versus a distribution group. Kind of understanding, should I create a team or not? And the other side of that, a lot of people don't know that you could just do a group chat. So as I'm chatting, so Glenn and I and Andre, we're all part of a site group chat. And it's just a normal chat with a whole bunch of people. And so we use that group chat. We don't have a team, although I think we do have a team site, Glenn, but we don't use it too often, or at least I don't. I use our group chat a lot more. And that's another way where your teachers or faculty and staff can create ad hoc, chatting groups, just like, when you send an email, you may create a distribution group or something. It's another way of communicating. So teachers are overwhelmed with all the different ways of communicating. And so, whether it's email, whether it's Teams chat, whether it's a team site, a lot of them are just overwhelmed, organizing their classroom, and giving them another tool becomes almost overwhelming. So I like to introduce chatting with them, because a lot of teachers are actually using their cell phones in order, Facebook Messenger or texting, and they're conducting school business over non-school managed services. I mean, your teachers are texting other teachers information about what's going on in school and other stuff. You don't want that to happen. Or even Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And it's like, well, you can install Teams on your device and be chatting. So just as easy as they opened up Facebook Messenger to send, another teacher a message, they can open up Teams and be doing that through a moderated school, owned that, specific system. So call it moderated chat in that sense. So some things to think about within that. So I covered a lot, and all of that kind of rooted in this architecture. I'm actually going to come back to this slide and talk about Google. Yeah, I'll get there on that one. One of the other areas I'm not going to spend a lot of time in, a lot of you know this already, but Teams. So one of the top questions that I get is, hey, there's all these settings, and a lot of people get confused with that. So there's actually 14 different policy settings in there. So if you go to a user and you go to the policies tab, you'll see them all here. There's a meeting policy, a messaging. There's a whole bunch in here. There's 14 total. So the general question comes into is, drawing awareness that there are 14, drawing an awareness that, hey, I need to figure out what policies my students should have and what my teachers and faculty should have. And so that's kind of the big question on that. And so there's, not to get too much into the details of that, I think just for the sake of time, I have a lot of content to cover. The key is knowing there's 14, determining what policies. I would recommend having your students be the global. So by default, everyone gets the global policy, and if you make it the most restricted, all of your, when you assign a Teams license, they're going to get the global policy. You don't have to move them to another group or remember to do that. Taking that extra step, that's complicated for IT. That's just another thing you'll have to remember. So just as people get Teams enabled, you assign that license, they're going to get the most restricted policies, that global. If there's a teacher, faculty, and staff, then I would create a new policy, like a meeting policy. So in here, if I were to create one, here's all my meeting policies that I have. So if I were to create one in here and I just name it, I don't know, I'll call it April 5 TFS, which I use that all the time for teachers, faculty, and staff. So really just have the global and then create one just for teachers, faculty, and staff. Go through here, flip all the different settings that you want to make for your particular users. If you don't know what these settings are, I love that Teams put a hyperlink right here. So you can open them up, and there it takes you right to the documentation of what they're those settings mean, how you should configure those. So detailed explanation. So that's a great way of finding the technical article. I know, a lot of other products like Intune, it's like, here's a setting, and then you got to go figure out the technical article for that. So I love that Teams added it right there. So you go through, you figure out, your specific settings, you save it. And then when you go to assignment, you can do direct assignment or you could do group-based assignment. I would encourage you to use group-based assignment. So the easiest way is you click on group. I'm going to click add group. And here is going to be a group picker. It could be a Azure AD group. It could be a synchronized group from on-prem. It could be a distribution group. It could be an M365 group. It could be anything that ends in group. You pick your particular group. I don't know. Here's just an example one that I always kind of use. Maybe 16B. I add it. This is what I was doing earlier. I pick my policy name that I have, where was the one that I did, and basically I apply it. And so now anybody in that group, 16B group 1, is now going to get those policies that I applied. And so all I have to do is manage that group 16B1. So in Azure Active Directory, how do you manage membership? Again, like I said, you do all of that through Azure Active Directory, through other means. I go down to groups. And in here, there's that group 16B1. So any users that are in that group, and again, like I said, you can do any type of group, just kind of showing you the connection pieces of that. So another question comes into, well, Eric, how do I know what policies those students should have? Well, there's kind of two guidelines that I would recommend you to use. And the first one is really going to be this article that we have on student safety. This is a fabulous article. I'm posting it in the chat right now. The zoom on that is really big. It's like a 20 font. But this article is absolutely fabulous because it's going to go over a lot of, why is it not hyperlinked? In here, there's how it's kind of broken up. It tells you all the policies, and I'm going to scroll down. So for meeting policies in here, here's all the ones that we recommend that you do. And there's two that I really want to focus on this particular one. And then here's ones for conversations. And so if you just expand on these, it'll give you instructions of what they mean. But the two that I want to talk about is really around the biggest things for your teachers to structure a virtual meeting just like it's a physical classroom. So let's take before COVID or even people back to school, students arrive off the bus or get dropped off. They're going to go and they're going to wait in the hallway. Teacher's going to show up. They can't go in the classroom. They're going to wait in the hallway. Teacher shows up, unlocks the classroom, and the students are allowed to come into the classroom. So what that means is the students are not allowed to enter the classroom unless the teacher is there. So we want to be able to provide that similar experience in a virtual world, in a virtual classroom, because we don't want students joining the meeting before the teacher, because they could be doing inappropriate things. They can't be running around the classroom, but they could be sharing their camera, doing inappropriate thing, putting things in the chat, and other stuff. You always want the teacher there. So there's two settings that are very important, and that is the meeting organizer is to use the lobby. And so the meeting organizer, when they're creating the meeting, would create the meeting that they are the only ones allowed to bypass. So everyone's going to wait in the lobby. The meeting organizer can bypass the lobby, go right into the meeting, and then allow the students in. Just like the teacher has a key to the conference room or the classroom, they can unlock it, allow the people in. So there's that setting. And then there's another setting around when you join a meeting, you could be a presenter or an attendee. So can I show it here? Yeah. So here's an example for this meeting here, where on the left-hand side, I expanded it out. So you get to see presenters. So I'm a presenter, Andre, Glenn, Margie, but all of you guys are attendees. So you want to make sure that your students are attendees and only the teacher is a presenter, because as a presenter, you have the ability to mute and kick people out of the meeting. If I wanted to kick, Glenn out of the meeting, I have the ability to do that. I've got the options on the side. I can make them an attendee. I can remove them from the meeting. Over here, other people, I can, actions you could take on attendees. You can disable their microphone. You can disable their camera. I could promote them to presenter. I can remove from meetings. So what's really important is your students are attendees, because if they're presenters, they're going to be kicking the teacher out of the meeting. They're going to be muting their other students. They're going to be doing inappropriate things. So it's always good when you're creating a meeting that you have those settings. So let's kind of walk you through what that is. So, and the easiest way is actually to walk you through creating a meeting and show you this, because some of these settings you might not know even existed before, or you didn't know how to set them. So I'm just going to launch. So I'm going to come over to calendar. Let's go and create a meeting really quick. Add a title. Yeah, I'll just say, social studies required attendees. I'll put, Ruby down in there. I'm just going to do this ad hoc, and I'm going to click send, because I just want to get to the point of where I can do that. So I created the meeting, and if I open it up and I go to edit, now within Teams, I'm going to get, there's this button right up here. It says meeting options. But if you were to send this in Outlook, it's also down here on the bottom. It's a hyperlink. Either way, whichever one that you click on, it's going to open up a web page where it allows the teacher, whoever, the meeting organizer, to configure meeting settings for that meeting. So, who can bypass the lobby? So you have a couple of options. Everyone, people in my organization, only me. So you would want it set to only me. So only the teacher is allowed to bypass the lobby. Who can present? Again, that's the attendee versus presenter. That would be only me. So those are the two real key settings out of that are really going to, I really encourage you to set. Now, you could set these by default using the Teams Admin Center. They're part of the meeting settings. So the meeting policies that are in here, those all map to these two down here, these two sets. I wish they were a lot friendlier, but just how they map in that particular piece of things. The third item is around chatting. I love this, where it's enabled, disabled, or in meeting only. I would encourage you to consider having this always set to in meeting. So what that means is, if you have it set to enabled, students can chat before the meeting and after the meeting using the meeting chat. That you have chat turned off in your school, so you don't want them finding a way to chat with each other that is unsupervised. So I would encourage you to set this to in meeting only. So that way, only during the active live meeting can they actually use the chat. So that was a new setting that recently came out. So these are the ones that I recommend that you can do. That leads me to another question around chat moderation. The only way to delete a meeting chat is to open a support ticket. Here within the next month or two, I think it's closer to June, they're going to allow the ability to allow the meeting organizer to delete a meeting chat. But for right now, if you want to delete a meeting chat, I'm sorry. And when you do open support, and if they don't do it immediately, then you need to loop in myself or somebody from your Microsoft account team. Sometimes support gets confused on things. But either way, if you need to do that, open up a support ticket on that particular piece of it. So that's meetings. Those are the settings. And again, I would encourage you to read through this. This is a lot of great information in here. It talks about disabling chat and all those other specific things in that. So that's kind of my spiel on settings. Was there any further kind of questions around that I saw pop up? I was going kind of quick. I don't think that there was.
So if you, maybe I missed something, but this is Bob from Davis.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
If I open up Teams to students, independent of meetings, don't students still have the ability to do one-on-one chat communication? Essentially text-based communication.
Yeah, so chat is another setting. You could turn it on or off. So
Okay.
It's a global setting for chat. But announced next, it starts rolling out this month, is they call it scoped chat, or they call it maybe something else, where you can have one-on-one chat between a student and a teacher, faculty, and staff.
So I think the hard thing to wrap our heads around and to to think about how we want to do it is that, particularly for secondary, at some level we have to have some mechanism for allowing students to communicate and collaborate independent of teachers when they're not in class. And so that then we know from experience with email that sometimes that chat gets abused, and bullying takes place, and somehow we just don't want that to completely go unnoticed. Now, maybe what we have to do is simply rely upon anonymous reporting of, hey, so and so was chatting in Teams the other night in a group that I was in, and all of a sudden they started using the N-word or something along, and trashing somebody. Just kind of curious as to what thoughts are about dealing with this situation.
There's actually two things that are coming for that. I would encourage you to use a channel. That way it's always moderated by the teacher. So you've got your normal chat, like when I come up here to chat, that's just normal individual chat. What I'm saying is you come over to a team is make sure all of that collaboration happens within a channel. So they can create small groups and channels. You get up to 300 channels.
Right.
I thought it was supposed to be raised up to 500, but I would encourage those to happen within a channel.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
And then just announced last week was chat. So they're going to allow scoped chat. What that means is you could turn on chat in a reduced functional capability, which will allow an administrator. There's actually going to be kind of three roles. The easiest way I can think of it is a teacher role, a faculty role, and a student role. So you assign the student role to all your students. They can't chat among each other, but what a teacher, if they have like the teacher role, a teacher can start a individual chat with a student or a group of students, but the teacher role has to start that. A student can't start that whatsoever. Although I had questions about that. I don't have the features, but the key point being is somebody with that teacher role has to establish it so that you can't have unmoderated. And then the staff is another role where they can't start it, but they can be brought into the conversation. So it's a way of allowing chat in a scoped capability. And that was just announced last week. So that's coming. I'm super excited for that because it's hopefully going to solve a lot of problems, because today the only way to have that is to use email. And you don't want your students going out using email and teaching a whole nother way of communicating. So scope chat's coming. I'm super excited about that. More will come out on that. All right, policies. So I've kind of gone through various policies, settings on that, going through those particular piece of it, looking at my list of where Teams DLP. All right, one thing I didn't have prepared was around, there were some questions around student safety, around you can upload and I'll send a link to this Sway, but basically you can use feature sets that are available in A5. So you get DLP capabilities where you could prevent students from using certain words in Teams, like, inappropriate. You could have essentially a dirty words list, and you can upload that dirty words list. And if a student attempts to chat using one of those words, it'll prevent them. It blocks that chat. So it's a great way of reducing it. It does require you to have A5 in order to use those feature sets. And I'll post a link, a guide that walks you through. As a peer of mine created it. He used Sway to do it. It's pretty easy. There's quite a few different settings and configurations. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what it does is we'll block that. It's okay. I'm going to be frank and honest with you. It provides you the tools. You still have to update that dirty words list, as I call it. The platform will remove it. But if you guys are really interested in having a solution that is really encompassing of student safety, I would encourage you to look at a partner solution called Gaggle. Just for the sake of time, but it's just Gaggle. Gaggle Teams. In fact, I can probably pull it up in terms of that. Gaggle Teams. Gaggle for Teams. Yeah, there's a whole bunch in here. Information about it, but a third-party product. So this is something that you'd be interested in. The whole point of Gaggle is to provide student safety. They've built a whole thing, and they've got suicide prevention. This is an all-encompassing. And the reason I'm recommending Gaggle is because that's exactly what they do. Microsoft provides the framework. It's a lot of do-it-yourself. So you got to self-create those words and do everything. Gaggle is a partner solution that takes that and has built on top of it. And I think it is a more comprehensive solution that is actually focused on what you guys are attempting to accomplish. So, there's two options for that. Gaggle does require A5 on top of that because it uses those scenarios. So I'll leave you guys. Anyway, go check it out, gaggle.net. Really, really kind of cool in that sense. So I think that answers some of the questions around, Bob, that you had around DLP. Ray, I think I answered some of your questions around that. Steve, I think I answered some of your questions around collaboration and SDS. I wanted to shift gears and go over to telephony real quick to talk about that. But the first thing that I actually want to show around telephony is, did I click off of it? One of the most common questions I get is not necessarily telephony, but is, hey, our users are complaining about the meeting, or hey, this user joined a meeting and he got kicked off. It's really about meeting voice and meeting quality and how you can moderate that. And so I'm going to show you really quick that on the easiest way is to go find a user. The teacher is complaining about the classroom. And so if I go and find, find that particular teacher, open it up, go to meetings and calls tab, it's going to list out all of the meetings that they've been a part of. So there's the meeting ID, the start time, how long ago, participants, and everything. And if you notice on the far right-hand side, Microsoft does analysis and will give it a rating, good or poor, based upon the analytics that we collected. And so in this example here, this call was classified as poor. So let's dive into it. So if we click on it, now we're going to look at the meeting details of it. In here, you're going to see another list. Up here up at the top, it's like who, when was it, overall meeting quality, how long. It looks like the meeting was 18 minutes and 31 seconds. There were 3 participants. And so down here, you can see actually who joined. And if you look really closely, Marie joined. There were 3 Erics, all the same person, and Ruby. And Eric had this poor rating. So it's kind of hard to see down here
what I like to is go off to this right-hand side and look at this chart view. And it'll actually show a timeline view of what happened. And I like this because it shows, okay, Eric started the meeting, and then Ruby joined, well, actually Marie joined, and then Ruby joined, and then about, towards the end, well, in the middle, Eric dropped, and then rejoined. What happened in between there? And then bad call quality, So it gives you this timeline to kind of see. And this is really cool in a classroom because you can see if students are dropping out and joining again. And so if we want to dive in and look at this, I can just click on View Session Details. And Teams is actually going to tell me why it got rated poor. And so right here, poor call quality was caused by the network. And so if I click on it, it's going to tell the analytics. So average network degradation, it had a really low MOS. So MOS is kind of this telephony measurement of quality. The lower the MOS, the better the experience, which is kind of opposite to me. Like the higher the MOS, if it's at a 5, that's like good. If it's at a 1, think of it like a star rating. It's got a 1-star rating. So it's really bad. Jitter was really high. Average packet loss, look at that, 87% packet loss. Maximum packet loss, 99. Of course, this person is going to have a bad experience with a network experience that poor. And so you're able to look at these analytics to help you understand that. So if users are having repetitive problems, you could pull up and look. And a lot of the issues today are just root cause. You're dealing with people's home networks. Their Wi-Fi access point could be overloaded. They don't have, good bandwidth. They're at the opposite end of the house, so their Wi-Fi signal strength is low. In fact, Teams collects a lot of that. So in this example here, see how it says data not available? This is because I was using a web client. We can't collect it with the browser. But if I was using an Android, an iOS, or one of these other ones, let's go here. We'll see if this one was. Yeah, so this example here, under microphone, as you can see, it collected the information about microphone and speaker and the web camera. If I click on system, oh, it's a Windows 10. It was, what version it was, what the computer name was. If I click on connectivity, it's going to show me Wi-Fi signal strength, what the adapter was. There's so much analytics that it actually pulls. And then network, it's going to pull, various information about that network, which is really cool. The other is around, I hear a lot of people, hey, the student, says he can't connect, or he keeps connecting and down back. Well, is the student really having a network problem, and is the student disconnecting himself or the network so bad that he can't connect? And so I'm going to show you actually how to figure out that. So if you pull up the particular session and you go to this debug tab, and you look at this Skype result detail, it's going to have a message next to it. It's not a very friendly message, but basically if they were to have ended the call, it would say like end call via user. But if the call ended, if they disconnected because of anything else, you're going to see kind of something like this, failed to send HTTP request. And that way it was a network-related issue. It's not really friendly, but if you look at it, you're able to determine, was it the user or was it somebody else? So in this one, they did the call because of a network-related issue. But if I were to go back and look at maybe this other person here, Marie's, and I look at their debug, they're probably going to have, oh yeah, this one had network problems also. Maybe we'll try Ruby. I think this one was my good example. Yeah, there's a lot more in here. This one was bad too. Skype, the router client failed to deliver. Yeah, it was another networking related issue, but on that. But anyway, this is how you determine
kind of how they ended that call. So that's another kind of cool little way of doing that. That's meeting quality. All right, I'm going to shift over to talking about voice real quick. And I want to get my new voice slides. So Teams voice. So I'm going to cover this pretty quickly because we've got about 12 minutes left. So the biggest question that we got is around, hey, how do I add PSTN capability? Let me kind of just jump to actually the core scenario, really. This is the real core scenario. How do I get so that my phone on the desk of my teacher, faculty, and staff rings, and also the phone, in Teams rings also? And if whoever picks it up first, whether they answer it in Teams or they answer it the physical phone, it'll be routed. So this feature set is pretty much what everyone wants in terms of call forking. And so if you have a on-premise PBX, let's say Cisco Call Manager, you're able to connect your PBX to Microsoft Teams through what we call direct route, and you could achieve this kind of call forking capability. And really, nothing has to change in your PBX. You just need to extend and connect direct routing. So let's talk about how to do that in a little bit more. Whoops. How did I get to that slide? I was supposed to come back to this one. So there's two ways of actually adding PSTN capability. What I just showed you was direct routing. That's where your PBX gets connected to Teams. You do have to connect through an SBC, a session. That SBC could be a physical appliance. So Cisco makes a Teams certified SBC. You would rack it, you would mount it, configure it. And that's kind of a VoIP router between your PBX and Teams. Calling plans is the other way. Calling plans is a lot easier. And basically with that is you simply just need to assign the phone system license, a calling minute plan, and a phone number to your user in Teams. It takes about 5 minutes to set up. It's very, very simple to do that. Both of these do take a phone systems license that could be purchased individually or they're included in a 5. Calling plans does require a minute plan. So those minute plans are down at the bottom. They come in as essentially 4 kind of pooled plans. So most people go with the 120 minutes, but there's 2 3Ks and there's a new unlimited plan. And we have a promo going on right now for that 120 minutes. And they're pooled. So if you have 100 users that purchase the 120 minute plan, that's going to be the size of your pool. 120 minutes times, and that's the size of the minute pool that they get. And you're only charged for outbound calls. You are not charged for inbound calls. So if, teacher makes a call to a parent and that parent is on a cell phone or a landline phone, they would be charged. But if the parent calls in or somebody calls them, then those are actually free. So you pay outbound, you receive free. And they're all pooled in terms of those plans. Very simple to set up with calling plans. Calling plans is where Microsoft is your full telephony provider. So your phone number is owned by Microsoft. Just like I have a personal cell phone and I have AT&T. AT&T has my phone number. If I want to move to Verizon, I have to port that phone number over to Verizon. So that would be the example of that. In calling plans, you need to port your number, or your number is actually owned by Microsoft on that particular. So you can port numbers over to calling plans. Very simple to set up. We do have a free trial for calling plans if you want to try that out. I could send you a link for this, or you could just do a screenshot if you want to. But I think the key point being we do have a free trial for calling plans. For direct routing, I would, given the complexity of connecting your PBX to Teams, I exclusively refer customers to New Wave. They are a partner is unlike any other partner. And the reason that I say that is because here's kind of my walkthrough on this. Actually, let me kind of reset context. Most people have a PBX today, Cisco Call Manager, and maybe due to COVID, you went out and got a soft phone solution. And so that could be ringtone, RingCentral or something else, but you have your campus phone, you have apps. Now you have to manage both of those. I call it a mixed experience. What you're looking for is an integrated experience. I just want to make that desk phone extended to Teams like I was showing you through call forking. And so with Teams Direct Routing, you're able to do that. SBC becomes a point of contention and also managing everything. So you could purchase an SBC, rack it, mount it, do a whole bunch of PowerShell commandlets, kind of do everything. It's a very DIY. It actually, there's a pretty high learning curve to it. I got to be honest with it. And a lot of customers don't want to have that learning curve whatsoever. They want to just more of a SaaS offering. It would be like equivalent of, hey, I want email. Well, you could deploy Exchange on-prem, or you could go Exchange online. If you want like an Exchange on-prem, well, then I'll say, go buy an SBC, go configure it. It's complicated. But if you want a SaaS type offering, I would encourage you to go with NewWave. They are like the Exchange online for Teams Direct Routing. They have an entire SaaS-based offering. You deploy nothing. They will configure all of the SBCs. They host them themselves in Azure, soft versions of the SBC that are running on Azure virtual machines, and they'll have you up and running in less than 24 hours. I like going NewWave simply because they provide everything. It's hosted. It's a SaaS offering. It's the quickest and easiest way to get up and going on that. And so they're a great partner to go with on that. I don't have any more time to kind of go on that. If you want to know more, feel free to shoot me an email. Bob put a link for NewWave. Thank you, Bob, on that. Tell Mark. Actually, Andre, could you post Mark's phone number or email in there also if you have it? If not, I'll post it in the meeting notes. But reach out to Mark from NewWave and just say, hey, Eric sent us. And he'll front load you in front of other customers. So that's kind of my spiel on voice on that. And again, calling plans, if you want to try that out, I'm more than happy to walk you through how to start a trial on that. If you have direct routing, I would encourage you to go have a 30-minute meeting with Mark and chat with him on that. So that's calling plans. We've got about 4 minutes left. I can go over just a little bit on things, and I think I want to, for the sake of covering the Google stuff really quick. Because the Google stuff can be quite complicated, but I think I can summarize it very, very quickly and easily if it decides to open. So the biggest problem with Google is and Teams is really around going back to this slide here, is when you try to add your students into Google, they don't have Exchange Online because their email is in Gmail. And so you can Teams enable them, but remember Exchange Online is this data repository for a lot of things. So if you're going to give them an identity in M365, assign the Teams license, but you're not going to assign Exchange Online. So that will prevent some things from working. Like they can't book meetings, they're not going to get voicemail, but chats will persist though. We create this phantom mailbox on the back end that's just used for chatting. So your chats will work on that. So when they go to Teams, they're probably not going to see the calendar icon because that is, they'll get the calendar icon if Exchange Online is enabled. So this is a good screenshot to kind of go over and look at. So your students can't book meetings. If your teachers, faculty, and staff book a meeting in Teams, it's actually not going to show up on the student's Google Calendar. That's actually the biggest issue. Teachers booking meetings and having them show up on the student's calendar. So if you're going to do that,
make sure you use the plugin for Google Workspaces. So as a teacher, if you're going to be doing any meeting, have your teachers install the plug from the Google Workspace Marketplace. And when they do that to go book a meeting, they're going to get an option to create a Teams meeting. And when that to their students or anybody else using Gmail, that meeting invite is actually going to show up on their Gmail calendars, on the Google Calendar. So if you're using, and in this situation, that's why I said I could summarize kind of this issue pretty succinctly, use this plugin when doing booking meetings. It is the ultimate way of doing that. That's kind of the key take-home point on that. What was the other? The other one that I kind of want to talk about just as we close out here is, and I usually give a demo. I have a full hour long on this Google and Android. Is a lot of you guys have Chromebooks for your students. And of course, you can run the web client, the browser version of Teams, but also consider running the Android client, because on Chromebooks, you can go out to the Play Store and install Android apps. And so you could be running the Android app parallel at the same time as the web client if you wanted to. And there are certain feature sets that are coming to the Android client that are not going to be coming to the web client. And actually, yeah, this I need to update this because Together Mode is available now. On the web client. It came out, was it in February, it was March. But on the Android, I'm still waiting for Blur to come out. And that's going to really help address equity problems with students. So that was supposed to have come out in March. I was actually asking about it here. They came out with it on the Teams Rooms devices, but I haven't seen it yet on the Android client. But I think the key point being on this is you can run the Android flavor of Teams in parallel. So I kind of like that experience. I was using my Chromebook for a while to kind of tinker around with it. I liked it because it was compact experience. It's pretty neat. I was like, wow, I wish I could have a compact on Windows. That was pretty neat. So I'm being told I have a hard stop now. So, oh, wait, that was Bob. I thought somebody else. But that kind of, I hope I covered a little bit about what everyone wanted to talk about in some degree. I'm happy to talk in more detail. You guys pretty much all know me, so feel free to shoot me an email and say, hey, Eric, I wanted to follow up on this topic or that topic. Myself and Andre will meet up with you guys and kind of answer more of your questions and deep dive on that. But I wanted to kind of just make sure that we ended at the top of the hour and then just open it up for any questions that people have regardless. So I wanted to make sure I leave room for that. So if you have questions, feel free to unmute your microphone or just type them in the chat, either way, and I can go through and answer some of those.
Eric, it looks like we got some people typing in questions. I did want to say to everyone, thank you for joining. And Glenn had to leave a little early, so I'm just saying thank you for your participation today. And it looks like now you have some questions coming in.
Yeah, so Steve, I posted it. So actually, Steve, here is the easiest way to book a meeting with me. Oh, well, there's my email right there. It's just ericowire@microsoft.com. And I don't have that slide open, but and if you want to book with me, here's the easiest way is to look at my bookings. So I'll just paste this in the meeting chat. I don't know why it shows up so huge, but that's the easiest way to contact me on that. There's kind of no further questions.
have a great rest of the day. And otherwise, it looks like, or anybody else have anything?
You know what? I just unmuted myself to save my time from typing it. Steve again. Eric, thanks for all the info, man. Is really good information. Thanks so much. There was a couple of sessions that I attended in the past and was asking for the recordings because those were somewhere I was having to multitask and wasn't able to dedicate so much time, undivided attention to the training. And I don't know if it was you or someone else said to email Tracy Goins or something. I had emailed her a couple of times on possibly getting those recordings or even slide decks, and I never got a response back. So I don't know if I'm emailing the wrong person or wrong email address.
You didn't. Tracy was fabulous. She unfortunately left Microsoft, so that's the reason why you were not getting a reply. So
gotcha.
Feel free to email myself. I think Margie, I don't know what those were. Maybe we have the links for them still, or what you were for, but I think we could get,
do have
so
them.
Tracy,
they were put on by Site. Site, I think, did 4 or 5 sessions, all different ones. One of them was on Azure, Teams, M365 and stuff. And I have the list of all the trainings that Site had coordinated with Microsoft and the ones that I registered for. So I do have them. So I'll just email you at eric@microsoft.com.
Glenn has the links for all of them. So I'll poke Glenn and I'll CC you, Steve. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
You have Glenn's email, right?
I do not. I don't think I do.
Oh.
But I may, if you don't mind sharing it, maybe. But I don't think I have Glenn's email.
Yeah, and I think Richard, he posted in the chat. Typically what a site has done with those recordings is they've posted them on their site as well. So we can try to figure out where they are on site's site. Sorry, that seems like a mouthful, but
doesn't it?
I think they are hosted on site's website as part of Microsoft resources.
Okay, Glenn.
So Steve, just poke Glenn. I posted his email in the chat, and feel free to CC me. He'll have all the links to those. I'm sure he does.
Okay, perfect. Otherwise, I'll go to the site website and see if they're on there.
I'll go to the site. Yes. It's like saying create a team in Microsoft Teams. You know, it's like, oh, geez, call things the same stuff.
Right.
Well, cool.
I appreciate it again. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, guys. Yeah, that was a whirlwind. My voice is kind of hoarse because I talked really quick and fast. So again, any follow-ups, feel free to shoot me an email. Happy to meet with you guys one-on-one. I think that's the kind of key point as we close out. Alrighty, Richard.